And so now I will go ahead and hand this session off to the wonderful Miss Katrina VanHuss. Woo!
Clearly, I sign your check, but thank you. Love you. Hey guys, I'm Katrina VanHuss. I'm the CEO of Turnkey. We are a company that helps nonprofits fix the world using strategy and consulting. With me today, we have Bob Southard, and Bob heads up the business unit that supports national nonprofits with various solutions to include product, technology, and fulfillment solutions. And then last, I have with me Otis Fulton, who's a social psychologist with Turnkey. He also happens to be my husband. If you've been on webinars before, I will frequently interrupt him and things like that married people do. So forgive us that. All right, so our topic today is the pivot, product pivot. You know, how do we use product in the future? And I'll tell you a little story. Bob and I have known each other for, I don't know, Bob, 25 years, 30 years?
Yeah, it's into the 20s for sure.
Yeah, it sure is. So Bob and I both, I think both of us were at the beginnings of our careers when we started supporting Relay for Life. And we both did that through the years. I would dare say that Bob got really, really good at product and fulfillment. Turnkey turned towards strategy and consulting and analytics. And we're pretty happy right now because we finally get to play together instead of being friendly fire to each other. So this is exciting for me. So we're in a new world. Things are happening that have never happened before. And the question is, how do we stay close to our constituents, either fundraisers or donors? And one of the last and best ways we can get in front of them is with a branded product. So we want to talk today about how to make the best use of that product, how to avoid some of the pitfalls, which, to be frank, Otis and I are seeing a lot of in the market today, that we see some panic reaction that is going to cause some long-term damage to relationships with constituents. Otis will be getting into that as we go forward. So if we want to advance, Otis. So the first thing we want to do, and one of the reasons that Turnkey took the business change that it did, is that, you know, we started looking at recognition 30 years ago as purely product, like recognition equal product. And one of the reasons that we did that and other people did that is because the way that we did business at that time, it could only be product. Like that was the only thing that was really manageable and measurable in terms of applying recognition. Since that time, our understanding of recognition has changed and our ability to apply and measure recognition has changed. So now when we think about recognition at Turnkey, we're thinking about it in terms of the way psychologists do. Recognition simply means I see you. If I can see you in a variety of different ways, I can really impact your behaviors a lot. So let's jump in. I'm going to turn it over to my husband and the resident social psychologist here at Linderwood Drive, Otis Fulton.
Thank you. You know, as Katrina was mentioning, recognition is a powerful motivator, and we know that people want to be recognized. I was surprised when I started digging into this research of the billions of dollars that are donated to U.S. charities each year. Less than 1% of these donations are made anonymously. So people want to be seen for doing good acts. And we have a lot of research that shows that people behave more pro-socially, as psychologists say, in public than they do in private. And I want to talk for a few minutes here about something that really has a lot of impact on how you use recognition items and so forth, and that's free choice behaviors.
Hey, Otis.
Yes.
I want to reassure the crowd. We're going to start very theoretical, and then we're going to go to practical, very strategic, and then to tactical. So Bob's going to be talking a lot about the end. Hopefully you'll be interrupting and interacting in the middle too, because that's what we do around here, right? Interrupt and interact. And apparently the rest of the nation does too, based on last night's. Yeah. Anyway, so go for it. But we are going to start with strategy and move to tactics. Go ahead.
Yes, you've given me 10 minutes, so I'll try to keep it in that window. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks very much. So I'm gonna talk about free choice behaviors. Free choice behaviors are something that psychologists have studied a lot over the last 30 or 40 years. And, you know, they're just things that we do because we want to do them. It's behaviors that we believe in, things we do when no one's watching, you know, you probably are familiar with that phrase. And, you know, people who have high affinity for or charities engage in these free choice behaviors to help them. And there's again been a lot of research on what happens when you introduce rewards to people who are doing things because they want to do them. They're these free choice behaviors. A God in social psychology, Edward Deci at the University of Rochester studied this for many, many years. And in 1999, published a meta-analysis. You may remember from your statistics classes, a meta-analysis is that it's an analysis of many studies. So he looked at 128 studies where rewards were given to people who were doing things that they wanted to do. They were engaged in free choice behaviors, things like volunteering or donating to nonprofits. Although these studies did not deal specifically with nonprofits, I'm quick to tell you. And it's a complicated analysis, but I kind of boiled it down for what it means to us in the nonprofit world. And I have a little chart here I think will be pretty easy to see. So red means you're less likely to repeat the behavior. Green means you're more likely to repeat the behavior, and black is neutral. There was no effect. So in terms of what happens when rewards are given to people who are doing things that they, what psychologists call autonomous behaviors, things that they're doing because they want to do them, it turns out that things like thank yous or impact communications, because of you, we rescued 12 dogs this month. Because of you, kids got fed where they would have gone hungry. These kinds of things were positive in terms of getting people to repeat the behavior, to donate, to volunteer, to fundraise, all these kinds of things. Tangible gifts were negative. They were demotivating. And it's interesting, though, when you broke it down, when people expected the gift, that's when it was really demotivating. Unexpected gifts didn't have that effect. And I've been trying to figure out, this is something that is definitely worth testing. I've been trying to figure out a study for this, but it's really hard with the time thing and so forth to get a clean study to test this. But my belief is very strong in that unexpected gifts are not neutral in a nonprofit kind of a condition. They're going to be positive. Unexpected gifts, you're going to get something in exchange for raising $100 and so forth. If you sign up 10 people, you'll get this kind of a gift. These kinds of things are demotivating in the long run. And like most things with people, though, it's not really simple. Sometimes that's true, and sometimes it's not. And I want to talk about something that psychologists call the exchange fiction. In 2009, there was this very interesting study. It's called Committing Altruism Under the Cloak of Self-Interest. And what they did was they asked people to make a donation to a nonprofit organization that they'd never donated to before. And they gave them these three, they said, if you donate this amount of money, you'll get these 3 candles. That's why you've got these 3 candles here. Now, what happened was that people donated more often when they were offered the candle than when they didn't. And the exchange fiction idea is this. We know that people avoid making long-term commitments. So their willingness to help a charitable organization is greater when the act was presented as some kind of an economic transaction than when it was presented as an act of charity. So, you know, it gave people the license to make kind of an impulse purchase. But the problem is that's not sustainable. So for people like who've never donated to your organization, these gifts are a way to get them in the door, get their foot in the door. But what we know about from Deci's work and others is that when people are already involved in your organization, giving them expected gifts is really demotivating. Katrina, usually interrupt me here. So
I do. I was trying to be good because you said 10 minutes, but you know, I think that this is really interesting to Bob and me because we have been doing this for so very long. And when I look back at some of the programs I've designed and deployed, you know, I look back and I wish I'd done them differently. And then one thing that really strikes me is that one of the phrases you just said is that in the long run, it will demotivate them. But what led me astray is that in the short run, you saw positive results.
Right.
Which is disturbing to me. But Anyway, Bob, any thoughts?
No, I mean, it is very interesting. I really was the most wowed by the stat that Otis led with, people want recognition. There's no doubt about it. And, the numbers bear it out. The billions of dollars, as he referenced, that are given to charity every year, only one, less than, he said it's far less than 1% is done anonymously. And that's amazing. It's an amazing stat that really underlines the fact that people want to be recognized and people want to be seen. I think the seen part is a really important piece of this. And so, going back to his, the diagram showing the expected versus unexpected gift piece, really there, and the thank you being green, that impact communication on that side of the ledger is really important. And I think that where we come in here and where we can really work together to create programs that are highly effective in providing that recognition, that ability for those individuals to be seen, is where we could tie the unexpected gifts with thank you and impact communication.
Absolutely.
Because I think the package is really important. And I still believe there's a place for, the fundraising incentives, but I think it's about how they're managed and how they're viewed. And some of the things that we'll get into, I think today, we're seeing organizations, augmenting their traditional fundraising incentive programs with things like challenges that are more something very specific, something that is, in a very timed period of time. It's a special opportunity to, drive a behavior for a very limited period of time. But, we want to work along with, you all and teams who are, and teams within the organizations who focus on communication to ensure that the messaging around these things are delivered in the right way.
Yeah, I think the condition in which the constituent exits this interaction is what we have not thought deeply about. Bob, I wanted to see if you had the same experience I have through the years, which is, one of the misleading data points is that short term, we can get a bump with a transactional use of a gift. And that makes us think it works. But what Otis is saying is that long-term, it actually demotivates them. How many surveys have you done to volunteer audiences who said, oh no, I don't want any recognition. I don't do it for that reason. Otis, what are they doing when they answer that way?
Well, they're not telling you the truth.
Do they even know the truth though? Do they even know?
They really don't know the truth. Once you introduce, and Bob used the word incentives, and it's it's very dangerous to try to incentivize free choice behaviors, because what it does is then it puts people into a transactional relationship, as Katrina said, and transactional relationships work. But the problem is when you take away the incentives, then the behavior drops off. So that's why you see the short-term bump in behavior, but it's not sustainable.
But to Bob's point, repositioning the language and the exchange, they can be really positive.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's essential that the brand affinity is there. Whenever there's a product, a gift being given, the brand affinity needs to be there. I mean, Katrina and I come from a background, in the early days, in 20 years ago or so, you would raise money and you'd get a shower radio or, a coffee maker or a bike or something like that. And that's just
the vacuum.
That is so transactional. That is, there's really no affinity there when you go down that path of just providing something that is a very there's nothing personal about it. The thank you piece is lost, the impact is lost, and it just becomes, a very transactional, extends a transactional relationship even further.
Yep. And I bet half the people on this call have been faced with a situation where they had a corporate sponsor who said, I'm going to give you gift cards, make use of them. And on our scale of things not to do, Otis, where would that be?
That is at the top of things not to do. That's right after giving somebody cash.
Yes. So it's cash, Starbucks gift card, vacuum cleaner.
That's exactly how that is exactly right.
All right. Otis, back to you. Keep going.
Okay, well, so that's the exchange fiction, really interesting study. So if we had, this is Turnkey's recommendations for using these kinds of items. Pretty simple. Number one, always branded 100% of the time. If you give something to someone, it's got to be branded. It should be of modest value. And if possible, it should be otherwise unavailable. You know, I see all the time, I'll go on nonprofits that I'm involved with, and they're selling the same kind of things that they give to people as gifts. And, you know, if you're giving someone a recognition item for participating in the XYZ Walk to Save These Kids, it should be something that's the only way you can get that. It should be exclusive for that experience, for whatever it is that they're doing for the organization. Okay, so let me just kind of wind up with this by talking a little bit about identity and how important we know now that the whole idea of identity is that I'm an animal rights crusader, which I am, by the way. I'm an animal rights crusader. I'm a cancer warrior. I'm a, you know, whatever we are. People give themselves these identities, and they're very meaningful, and they're very predictive of the way that they'll then behave. One of the ways that reinforce identity is getting people up in front of the group, getting volunteers up and having them give a testimonial about how, you know, how meaningful the experience is to them. Just an attaboy is great. This recognition, just a personal thank you. And these branded items. Now, the branded items are really very, very powerful in terms of instilling identity. And people love to kind of brand themselves. I don't know if you can see this. This is my University of Virginia class ring. Part of my personal identity is I'm a University of Virginia alumni. And one of the things that we know now about thanking people that is very, very effective is this. Recognizing them for who they are, their identity versus what they do. So saying, thanks for being a compassionate, caring person who wants to end world hunger, as opposed to the line that I've written a million times, thank you for raising $100 for the 2020 Walk to End Hunger. Now, you wouldn't think that there's much difference here. It's kind of a little difference of degrees, but by appealing to a person's identity, it's much more powerful than appealing, than recognizing them just for something they did. So recognizing them for who they are versus what they did is very powerful to people. And again, it's going to make it much more likely that they're going to continue with that behavior and that relationship that they're in with the organization. And that's my 10 minutes. So now I'm
You slid in. You were good. I'm impressed. All right. So Bob, let's get tactical on this thing. You have lots and lots of clients who going into 2020 had fully blown recognition programs in place. These folks are trying to pivot their events and their use of this product. One of the things that we've seen that concerns us, frankly, is I'm guessing they've got a boatload of product and they're transactionalizing their relationships with constituents through the say, oh, we've got big heads now. Hey, everybody. You know, they're transactionalizing the relationships with constituents through the sale of those products for a behavior or for a literal dollar amount. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, we are for sure. And you know, it's fun to see, you know, what different organizations are doing. You know, and it's a variety. It's a mixed bag of how folks are approaching that situation. Most everyone continued with their recognition programs, and I think that's what we would if you've implemented it and you're on a path to deploy it for the year. Obviously, fundraising is down, so it does create a situation for them, these organizations, where, you know, they're going to have likely leftover product, or projected usage is going to be much higher than, or much lower than what they anticipated based upon, you know, what we thought 2020 was going to be. But
Right.
there are some definite opportunities that folks have taken up. Some folks are rolling product over into next year, and that's understandable. And that's, you know, something that we would advise them to do and work along with them to make happen. We've also turned them into some, you know, some of that automated delivery of thank yous. In some cases expected, some cases unexpected, but almost always in those type of environments where we may, you know, pick an item. It could be a tumbler, it could be a, you know, a tote bag or whatever the product is that they had purchased for one purpose. If it wasn't going to be used at the actual event, maybe there's a segment of the volunteers that they want to ensure that they recognize for their past support and things, you know, their continued engagement. And we, through that data integration, will automatically deliver a product, you know, 2 weeks pre their original event date, saying, hey, so sorry we aren't having the event, but we're so excited to have you on board as a volunteer and want to continue to, you know, foster, you know, you don't say this in the message, but the purpose is to continue to foster the relationship.
And what segments do you see your clients focusing on?
Segments,
As in
meaning
team captains, past participants, survivors?
I mean, it's a little bit of all, depending upon the organization, really. A lot of volunteer though, in volunteer leadership roles. So it'd be, you know, event leadership teams, team captains, committee members, or whatever they're called within their organization. But it's primarily those who are in a leadership role and have shown, you know, past engagement, and they want to, you know, foster that relationship.
So in the past, you know, a recognition program would be maybe 3 to 5% of the revenue of an event, the T-shirt, some percent. Those two items together are the biggest event. That.
Well, I mean, likely what we're doing is a ton more of direct delivery, as mentioned. You know, we do through our redemption system are able to find where, you know, because we're asking them to redeem, there is some attrition. So you're not buying one for one, because there's some folks who say, you know what, I don't need my shirt, I don't need my item. Doesn't matter to me. I want it to stay with the cause. So, you know, we see that percentage, you know, hovering anywhere between 50 to 70% of folks will ultimately redeem, depending upon, again, the product. If it's, you know, if it's a really small product, likely they'll say, you know what, I'll forgo it. So they kind of end up on that 50% range. If it's something nicer, say for your $1,000 club members or those individuals that you're recognizing with that club exclusivity, typically the redemption rate is much stronger within that group, because again, back to Otis, some of Otis's talking points there and findings. This is a badge of honor. This is an opportunity for me to wear something that says something about who I am. So again, it's strengthening that understanding that we know who you are and we're thankful for who you are. And I think that's a huge connection to make with your brand. As you're looking at branded merchandise, you want to be able to make that connection. If you can make that connection, you really check the boxes that are most important about making the program ultimately effective for you.
Yep. You just touched on something, and I gave Bob a list of questions, everybody, but that never works. So here we go. So two things. Number one, the word redeem. Otis, what does that word mean?
Well, you know, it's part of the language of the marketplace. That's the problem. And I can tell you, as someone who's tried to write copy in this space, it's really hard to get away from the language of the marketplace. You know, register now, you'll get a discount if by this date, and so forth. You know, it's not the kind of language that nonprofits should be using. That's the kind of thing that you know, get at Walmart and in those kinds of ads.
So I was never able to convince my clients of this, but Bob, hopefully you will be able to. And that is this: what would be the impact psychologically if we didn't ask them to redeem, or maybe even tell them that we were going to send them anything in a recognition program, but just did it, which would increase our costs significantly, like 40%, right? But what would that do in your mind, Otis, to the constituent?
Well, I'm committed to this unexpected gift idea. You know, we're working with an organization that sent an unexpected gift. It was hand sanitizer with their logo on it, the nonprofit's logo, and it was wildly successful. Again, I would love to design an experiment to test this, but the problem is you've got it's a chicken and an egg problem to design this kind of thing. That's why no one has actually done it.
Yeah.
But I'm convinced the unexpected gifts are really the way to go in most cases.
So then the kind of recognition program that we're describing is one in which we rewrite the copy to get away from focusing on what they did, but rather who they are. And the more someone raises, because ultimately, like I said, it is about revenue, the more communications we'd be sending out saying, you're the most caring person, you're the most loving person, you're the most thoughtful person. And then once we're done, or when we're ready, which means it doesn't need to be at the end, we simply ship them recognition in an automated fashion. I mean, it's a different approach to recognition. It's not transactional at all. Nobody does it. Bob, from your side of the desk, technically and financially, what would that do to somebody's program to do that?
Well, the biggest challenge that you have, obviously, in any automated program is: does somebody have? Do you have a stable database of record for those individuals? Because in order to send anything unexpected, you can't confirm their address, and if you can't confirm their address, are you going? What is the outcome of that?
Right.
So we almost always ask them to confirm in some way, shape, or form, and maybe it's about language too, where we would send something to them that says, we have something for you, we want to send you a thank you note or whatever, what is, can you confirm your address?
Yeah.
Something to that effect. And then there's an unexpected gift contained in it. Those are probably the biggest challenge that we see with any of these type of programs, is ensuring that you've got that stable, accurate database.
Yeah.
I mean, we can help with that. The good thing is that once we get that information through our portals on the backside, typically the organization can log in and get real-time access. As soon as Katrina has confirmed her address, boom, it's there in the database and ready for their consumption or use in any other way.
That seems to open some opportunity, if the client can log into your database and understand the experience of the constituent, meaning they're going to get shipped a gift, or they got shipped a gift, or they didn't confirm their address. Isn't that a lovely touch point for a staff person, if that's a high value fundraiser, to get inside the relationship that way, which these days I think is more achievable than in the past.
Can I interrupt and take a question here? Shana Masterson talked about it, said that I described unexpected gifts as being neutral, but it sounds like the case of the hand sanitizer was positive. Yes. Now, again, I want to make sure I was completely clear. In the studies that DETCHI did, the 128 meta-analysis studies, that was found, unexpected gifts were found to be neutral in those situations. I am a firm believer that unexpected gifts are going to be positive for people that are participating in nonprofit missions. But again, it's a very difficult thing to test, to design an experiment, because, people are getting unexpected gifts, then you're measuring what they did afterwards. Whereas with expected gifts, you can only measure what they did before the thing got there. So it's kind of this impossible thing to really test. But I am convinced that that unexpected gifts in a nonprofit setting is very positive for people and will lead to increasing participation.
Otis, as our nonprofits struggle to convert product in their warehouse to cash, which I think is what's going on, we're seeing just a ton of offers out there that is a literal conversion to cash. The USO must have millions of t-shirts, because they have offered me one from everything, having a cup of coffee, scratching my butt on Tuesday. I'm like, wow. So what do you think is the long-term impact of that? And I understand the stress, because you got a million t-shirts, that's a big problem. But what kind of long-term damage happens when you go to market like that?
I'm sorry, I'm not quite understanding what this.
So the USO is offering hope they're not on the call. The USO is offering T-shirts for a variety of behaviors.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay.
So what is the long-term impact of that?
You know, again, the research is very clear that long-term it's negative.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, however, that T-shirts are a great gift if presented in the right way, because it reinforces a person's identity. Just as Bob was saying, that all these things that have the brand on them and so forth, it helps to reinforce the person's identity. You're actually physically labeling yourself when you're wearing a shirt from a nonprofit, and there are all kinds of secondary benefits that people get too. Psychologists talk about people have image motivation. They have a motivation for others to see that they're the kind of person that does good things for their communities. And so wearing a T-shirt from the American Cancer Society, the Richmond RSPCA, and so forth, is a great way to broadcast to people and show, hey, I'm the kind of person that cares about my community and does good things for us all.
Yep.
So, you know, T-shirts are just you know, as much as we love T-shirts in the nonprofit world, they deserve their place.
All right. So Christina Hicks has given us a fun one to chew on. What about an old T-shirt from a previous year? And I will ask each of you to collaborate to come up with the answer. How do I use that T-shirt that doesn't transactionalize my relationship with that constituent? How would I do that? How would I, and Otis, how would I position it? Bob, how would I get it to them most effectively once you've heard the positioning? Otis? Curveball.
Oh yeah, that was a curveball. Well, you know, there are just so many ways to, you know, when you get away from, and I'm going to differ with Bob a little bit. And I know that this is the language. When I met Katrina 7 years ago, she talked in this language using the word incentive, the incentive program. If you're looking at your program as an incentive program, you're long-term probably going to be demotivating people, because you can't incentivize people into free choice behaviors. You in effect always set up this transactional relationship by trying to incentivize people. So really, recognition programs is what we should be focusing on. And again, I think that using these as unexpected gifts are always going to be a more powerful way to do that. Bob made a very good point though about the exclusive group kind of a thing where you're in a certain tier and so forth. You're a member of the 1000% club or whatever it is. See, that's really good, because that's part of your identity, and building on that as part of your part of a person's identity can be very, very powerful.
Yeah, we've seen that. That's a huge motivator. People want to be in that group. They want to be known and seen and display proudly the fact that they are part of that group. So again, it's kind of like, you know, if you view your logo or your brand as a badge of honor, that is like a what do you want to call it? I was going to say badge of honor on steroids. It's like the next level or next level up or 2 levels, depending upon which club you're part of. And so I think that it's all about, you know, what keeps running through here is it's all about the messaging and how this is being packaged and presented to if it's being packaged and presented as an incentive, it can be very easily transitioned to a transactional relationship. If it's recognition and it's packaged with identity, merchandise, that individual who gets it knows that you get them, you understand them, you see them, and you're thankful for them, and you want them to be proud to be identifying themselves with your brand. So I think it's, you know, I feel the big thread running through here is that it's majorly important how this is positioned for your brand, and how you, as the leadership group for your nonprofit who are setting the course for the way ahead, how you are packaging these programs is the most important element to their overall and long-term, as Otis said, success. It's not that they're bad, it's that they've been bad because we've made them bad. And I will include myself in that, because I've been part of this for 20 years. And, you know, I think we're seeing more and more a shift to, this is recognition. That's what it is. It's all part of recognition and your identity, your brand's identity, but also the identity of your key stakeholders and your key participants that are your lifeblood. 2
words. Amen, brother. You know, that is exactly, I am thrilled to say that. In the beginning of our relationship, Otis and my own, when I would use the word incentive, he would literally take my wine glass away and say, you can't have it back until you say the right word. I'm like, okay, fine. Say recognition, fine. So anyway, and
if I could just make one more comment about the power of identity. There's research that shows us that people who, well, there are different types of, some identities are more salient than others at any given time in a person's life. But you find that when someone has a very salient part of their identity as an animal rights advocate, for example, when they make a donation to an organization that saves animals, they don't see it as the money leaving them. They see it as just moving around money within their identity. So, you know, imagine how powerful that is in terms of motivating people. When they don't see it as the money going away, as it being spent, in other words, they just see it as using it for part of their identity.
Interesting. All right, but back to Christina's question. How are we going to use this old t-shirt? Otis, what copy are you going to write about that?
You know, you're going to write copy that talks about, again, the person's identity, that we want compassionate, caring individuals that care about the XYZ community to have these. I love somebody said calling old t-shirts vintage. You know, you write copy about, it's a vintage t-shirt, but there's nothing about vintage about the way that you care for animals. Those kinds of things. Just make something very, very, very personal. Well, I often use the example, you know, imagine you're asking your sister to come over to help you clean out your garage on Saturday afternoon. Would you give her a Target gift card to say thank you? You know, I know you wouldn't do that. It's not the kind of relationship you have. And so, you know, anything that I could do to give my sister, if I give, hey, would you like to have this vintage t-shirt? Because you're a great person and, you know, we had a lot of fun. Or would you like a bottle of wine? You know, just if you can't give it to your sister, if it'd be weird for you to give it to your sister, it'd be weird for you to give it to your supporters as well.
How would you, so you send the t-shirt. What's your next action?
We need to get off the t-shirt example, Katrina.
No.
Yes.
No, what's your next communications action? Like, you've sent a t-shirt, you've primed their identity. What do you do next? Yeah.
Well, you know, I don't think, number one, I don't think there's anything wrong with putting a donation envelope in with the t-shirt. You know, research has shown that that's actually very effective. I would not make an ask necessarily right then. I would make an ask later. And by the way, one other thing about asks and so forth, people, and I just read some very disturbing research on this in the nonprofit space. People think that when people have just made a donation, then it's not a good idea to ask them for another donation for X amount of time. The most likely time for a person to make another donation is when they've just made a donation. So thanking them, saying, this is what it allowed us to do. If you'd like to double your donation, we can do this much more. So people that have just done something, asking them to do more it turns out to be a great strategy, not a challenging one.
So Bob, same t-shirt, Christina, thanks for writing in. You got Christina's t-shirt. How would you package it? How easy is it to get that donation envelope in? How do you handle the tech and the fulfillment processes around that? And how do you recommend shipping it? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's your biggest hurdle, is that, you know, you're going to spend more delivering that shirt than the shirt is probably worth if you have to mail them to someone. I mean, there's some relatively inexpensive mailing options these days with if it's less than £1, but still, just the act of, you know, pulling that shirt and packaging it for mailing. Most of them are in printer folds. I mean, that's a challenging situation that she describes, and we're familiar with it, but don't have a lot of really good, hey, here's a great idea, this is what you should do with it. So I'm sorry, you stumped me, Christina. I've been stumped with that one for a long time. I don't want to pretend that there's a magic wand we can wave on that, in that type of. So I think that going forward, the most important piece about all of your purchases, and this is why data integration is so important wherever it's available, because at the end of the day, we really want to use the incoming data to drive decision making around the inventory that we order, so that we keep your inventory levels down to reasonable numbers, and you don't have that pile of leftover t-shirts that you didn't end up using because, hey, we went with 400 because last year was 300 and we thought for sure we would have another 100 people, and lo and behold, we only ended up with 200 this year.
So why don't you talk about that? Like, talk about how you do those projections. And when you talk about the data feed, talk about some of the successful integrations that has released manpower on the client side, the nonprofit side, and on your side.
Well, yeah, that's as we were prepping for this call, one of the things that I think you were talking about was regarding staff morale and, just what staff has to deal with. Yep. And how branded product can help there. I'll tell you what, the best thing that we can do for staff is make their lives easier by helping them with the delivery and execution of any branded product that they are wanting to distribute. At the end of the day, staff do not want to deal with having to make sure that Sally gets her team captain item or that somebody gets taken care of, because at the end of the day, they don't get it, they're inevitably going to hear from them, and now you've jeopardized a relationship with the key person. So I would say, our best programs that we have done in that arena have been a true partnership between our team and the nonprofit to be able to assess the data from years past. Obviously, where we've been working with an organization for a number of years, it's much easier for us to manage that projection. But in the early going, it has to be a partnership to understand what has it been historically, and what does the data tell us in terms of what to expect if you were to switch to a Halo type solution here. What does that do to your overall usage? If there is a quote unquote redemption process and there's some of that attrition, what should you expect for this type of a program? And what is your savings ultimately going to be? The other factor to keep in mind is ensuring that the end recipient of the gift, if it is an expected gift, that they understand that there is a period of time that they need to be prepared that this isn't going to ship today. If we're trying to manage the inventory the way that we should, we need to build in some expectation that there's going to be a little bit of a lag between the time we get their order and the time, or we call it order, but by the time we get their information and they actually receive the product. Because again, we're trying to manage that production and delivery cycle to a point where we're not sitting on thousands of a product hoping we're going to have enough people to use that item.
Right. Yeah. Otis will take away your Sauvignon Blanc if you use the word order again. I'm just saying. We got a great question here. Is there such a thing as recognition burnout? What is the recommended number of branded items to give our constituents in a fiscal year? When does the number of items become ineffective? Interesting. I think it's all about the positioning, isn't it? I mean, if we're not recognizing for behaviors, but instead for their identity, for who they are, it's limitless, isn't it, Otis?
Yeah, we're in general, we're under recognizing people. We don't have the problem where we're over recognizing people.
Right.
We're under recognizing, and I'm not talking just about with items. There are just plenty of great ways to recognize people that are very meaningful. I got a call from a student at Virginia Commonwealth University. I've got a master's from there, and I donated $100 not too long ago to their scholarship fund. And this was a student that was actually benefited from this fund. And it was just the greatest call ever. She introduced herself and told me where she was from and so forth, and thanked me. And she didn't have to ask for another donation. I wanted to give her more. I said, hey, can you tell me how I can donate more? It was just a great call. So, it was personal, it was short, but it just really made my week. So
that was recognition.
It was recognition, exactly. So,
Bob, explain the greatest mystery to me in the world, which is the phenomena of the relay Afghan. Can you really have too many? No, you can't. You remember?
Yes, yes, I do remember that one. Yeah, and I think again that was about positioning at the time. I mean, it was about, and I think that it was effective, very effective at the time. And I think that we can learn a lesson from some of those past experiences, where at times you will come across a phenomenon, and everybody wants something, and
Yeah.
you need to ensure that you take it and run with it when you're in that mode. But you can't plan for that. One thing I was going to say, that to tag on to something that you said, I think at the close of your last point, Katrina, is you said, if we're not recognizing for behaviors but recognizing for identity, I would say that you're not messaging around the behavior. You aren't saying, because you raised $100, but that may be your benchmark that you're using as an organization. So behind the scenes, you're measuring, hey, what are the metrics behind this relationship? And at the end of the day, does it justify this messaging around identity? So you're still messaging around identity, but you still want to use those metrics to drive decisions as an organization.
Yes.
So I wanted to be sure you were on the same page with that, and that was just something that that's the way that those are the conversations that we have
Yes.
with the organizations we support.
On the same page. Bob, another question for you. You referenced these in passing earlier. Someone wants to know about your thoughts on experience boxes sent as part of a virtual experience where they pivoted. Now they're doing something in the community or in the home. Items being branded by the organization with the goal of recognizing, thanking, but also enhancing experience. Are you seeing more nonprofits do this during virtual? And what sort of ROI, or do we know yet?
I don't think you know yet. It's very popular and people love them. People are really excited to get them. And I think that it does open up some different avenues. Obviously, it's got to be very planned out. We didn't have time to plan a lot in 2020. It just sort of happened. And so we ended up cobbling some of those things together for this year. But as we look to 2021 and beyond, if organizations are looking to do that, it opens up some pretty unique opportunities to, again, communicate. And I even think along the lines of sponsorship, it's an opportunity for your sponsors to contribute something to that event experience box.
Absolutely.
And they get their brand delivered along with a signature nonprofit brand that's very impactful for that organization, showing their community connection and all of that. And so there's doors that are being opened in this arena, but we would want to be sure that we map that out well in advance so that we can really properly put it together. What we've found is that when you've got 4, 5, 6 items coming from 4, 5, 6 factories, all being inserted into a box with crinkle paper and all this kind of stuff, to make it look pretty, there's a lot to consider. And our team pulled off some pretty crazy hours putting these things together this year. We don't want to replicate that. We want it to be much more automated.
Hey, on that same point, who gets these boxes? Is it the team captain, geographic lead in an area?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. It's really, okay. There's not a one size fits all answer to that. In some cases, it's every participant who raised at least $100.
Okay.
And it goes with their T-shirt. And in other cases, it's, a very small subset of volunteer leadership. So it really depends.
So, all right, the most tactical question I'm going to ask you today, top 3 products that people rave about right now when they get them from a nonprofit, what are they?
Man, I am so far out of the product world. And I say that in a laughing way. That my team always laughs at me because they're always like, you don't even know what we're selling out here, because I go in and establish the relationship and kind of make sure that the system that we're putting in place is the right system, and then we have merchandisers who it would be much better for me to haul one of our merchandisers in here and have them jump on the webinar and answer the question.
Actually, I'm really heartened to hear you say that, because I think often people are distracted by the product and they forget to do the strategy.
You have to have the strategy and the system. I mean, without the strategy and the system, you could have the coolest product under the sun, And if
Doesn't
it
matter.
doesn't get properly delivered or delivered with the right message or doesn't meet the need strategically, you've missed it.
Yep. One more question. Are these experience boxes targeted more toward gala type events, like for table sponsors, or is it more still in the peer-to-peer realm?
But it is both, honestly. It really is both. I know I keep saying that, but it really is, you know, the way that it is. We're doing a box for, you know, an event in the Hamptons with some horse items because it's equestrian. And then we're doing golf boxes for golf events. And then we're doing event boxes for virtual events. So it's
Right.
really all over the place.
All over. You are the face of the nonprofit in the home right now, except for what we're doing right here. My friend Sarah Smith just threw the gauntlet down on me and said, Katrina, can you answer that question yourself about the top 3 items? My answer is exactly the same as Bob's. I don't know. I don't know. And I don't want to know.
With masks, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be masks, and it's got to be, you know, maybe the comfort buttons that go onto your hat or headband that protect your ears, keep your ears. But it's got to be those type of things, just because of the weird environment we're living in right now.
Yeah. Otis, what would you say? What are the characteristics of a top product used in an experience box in your mind?
Well, you know, I love the hand sanitizer idea.
Why?
I love the hand sanitizer because it said, I care about you and I care about your family. So, you know, it's a very personal kind of an item. It keeps people safe. I just thought that those things.
I got an idea. I'm sorry to interrupt. I got an idea. Why don't we include the 3 items? I'll meet with the merchandising team and we'll include that in our follow-up to this call with pictures and links and info.
Perfect.
That makes sense? Because that way we get it from the folks who know.
Oh, awesome. We'll do it. Sarah, thank you for that question. Look what you got out of it. Very nice. All right, we are just about at time. I want to thank Shana Masterson. You are so good at this. I'm looking at her comments. I know all the some of the panelists, or actually this was in Q&A to the panelists. So Shana's with Blackbaud, but she has been on the ground doing this stuff. And I want to read one of her comments. She said, those old t-shirts were relationship building gold, all caps for me. Sponsor meetings, new team captain meetings, etc. Personalizing the t-shirts for teams was also extremely effective for deepening the relationships with teams, and particularly team captains, to Otis's point. And then I also wanted to call out someone from Hydrocephalus who asked a question, actually made a comment, and I wondered if we could comment on this. She said, she or he said, I'd be more likely to drop the recognition gift program if the big boys, ACS, March Dimes, Heart, Diabetes, etc., if they do, because until they do, then I don't know how a smaller nonprofit can do this. I assume that means, you know, a standard of customer service from the nonprofit space. What do you think, Bob?
I would say, I mean, from my perspective, today's been very enlightening, and some of the conversations that I've shared with Otis has been very enlightening. I think, from my perspective, I don't know that, I mean, I would ever recommend dropping it. I would recommend repositioning it and packaging it around communication and identity, like we talked today, and making sure that it's a recognition program. And it's not positioned as an incentive program and a raise, you know, so much around raise X, get Y.
Love it.
So.
I love it. I completely agree with you. Otis, any thoughts?
No, Bob's absolutely right. You know, it really is all about positioning. It's,
one of the things I've struggled with over the years, I think we all have, is like, again, product recognition is the easiest to manage, handle, and measure. But there's so many other kinds of recognition that we don't weave into the product program, probably because it's hard. I think those are some of the opportunities that we're missing in recognition. As an aside, it doesn't really matter here, but like in volunteer leadership, you know, recognizing them for their leadership in different ways, among them self-labeling product, I think would be really powerful to dig hard into and to start to measure. So we are done. Thank you to everybody who interacted on chat and Q&A. Love you. Most of you, I probably know you, and I do love you. Guys, thank you so much. Bob, I am thrilled to be working with you in this way. Thank you for doing this.
I feel the same, and I appreciate, you know, I appreciate being on and being a guest speaker, whatever you call it, and happy to do more of these as opportunities arise. And
absolutely,
very nice visit. So thank you.
Thank you, Otis. I'll see you in a minute, right?
okay.
Goodbye, everyone. Thanks so much.